All right, we'll get a few more folks added. Oh, Kristine, thank you for hitting record.
Kristine, I can keep letting people in if you want to.
Okay.
Go on with what you were saying.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we'll just go ahead and get started, and folks can join us as they enter the room. So hello, Interreach, and welcome to our February webinar. So my name is Kristine Glauber, and I'm the webinar chair for our Interdisciplinary Integration Research Careers Hub webinar series. And I just wanted to see, can I see a show of hands either via the Zoom emojis or sort of an ASL applause if you're joining us for the first time today? All right, great. Sarah, welcome. So nice to have you. Anyone else? I'm recognizing a lot of these names. Wonderful. Awesome. Well, Sarah, welcome, and welcome to everyone who's joining us again. And thank you so much for being here today. So our purpose here as a community of practice is to collectively develop our profession and provide professional development for our arrows who work to span boundaries in complex research initiatives. And so to that end, we're here today for our 7th and final installment of this excellent series on science facilitation from our colleagues at the Facilitation Guild, which is the art and science of making meaningful moments, subtle strategies, and creative conditions for effective and uplifting facilitation. So today's session is aptly planned and named The Art of Adjourning. And I love the intentionality that our hosts have baked into the series from start to end, which is just a perfect reflection of the intention of today's webinar also. I also want to just offer a reminder that we have a great set of webinars shaping up for our spring series, which is kind of a melding of our, not a melding, linked webinars and reading and discussion clubs. And Kristine Hendren is gonna put the link to that proposal submission form in the chat. If you've got questions about that, please feel free to email me or our co-host here, Kristine Hendren. And with that, I am going to introduce our speakers for today, and then I'll pass it over to them. So we have 3 speakers today. Really excited to hear from all 3 of them. Anne Heberger Marino is the founder of Lean-To Collaborations. She brings a breadth and depth of experience from 20 years of working across disciplines and sectors. So Lean-To Collaborations helps purpose-driven teams build the mindset, structures, and processes they need to address complex social, environmental, and technical challenges. This work extends her 12-year career as a senior program director and program officer at the U.S. National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. Anne is a facilitator, leadership team coach, and a hockey mom. And the Lean-To in Lean-To Collaborations pays homage to her, pays homage to her lifelong love of hiking and the power of shared purpose, wonder, and open structures to help teams traverse the terrain from funding to flourishing. And it's such a wonderful sentence. I love it so much. Dr. Hannah Love is a team scientist and professional facilitator. She works full-time doing team science consulting and science facilitation with Divergent Science LLC. Hannah has an MS in student affairs in higher education, an MA in sociology, and a PhD in sociology from Colorado State University. Her background includes work in student affairs and higher education, water conflict, and nonprofit fundraising. Hannah has 13 years of facilitation experience, including experience in higher education facilitation, water conflict facilitation, and science facilitation. And since 2015, she's been working using her skills in higher education to design team science trainings, retreats, and workshops for scientific teams. And last but not least is Alyssa Stephens, who is the founder of Cactus Consulting LLC, where she uses social science to help communities work together to solve prickly problems, hence the Cactus Consulting. Alyssa is a skilled facilitator with nearly a decade of experience in consulting, nonprofit administration, and local government. She received her MA in sociology from Colorado State University, where she studied community and social change. Her facilitation style brings together elements from education, social science, team science, and public deliberation to help teams communicate, innovate, and activate. So thank you to each of you for being here today, both our speakers and all of our guests. So thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to Anne, Hannah, and Alyssa.
Thank you so much. All right, I am going to kick us off today. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here to talk with us about the art of adjourning. I'll wait for just a second. Wonderful. All right, so today we are here to talk about endings. And if you read the description, part of what we talked about was, the difference between the way we talk about and think about beginnings and endings. While beginnings are usually discussed with a lot of energy and enthusiasm and excitement, attitudes towards endings tend to be a bit more mixed. So you get quotes like this one that talk about ending as sweet sorrow, or people who use the word bittersweet. So when our team kind of thought about the word bittersweet, the first thing we thought of was chocolate chip cookies. So today we're going to start by talking with you about how you can make your adjournment as satisfying as a chocolate chip cookie, and then provide some specific recipes you can use in your own work. So I appreciate, Kristine, you used the word baked in your, so I feel like you were just kind of setting us right up for this. So our team really loved the idea of, can you go back just a slide? Thanks. Our team really loved the idea of endings being like chocolate chip cookies for a few reasons. First, everyone likes their cookies just a little bit different. If you've been on social media, you may have seen people testing recipes to see which chocolate chip cookie recipe is the best. But it's truly in the eye of the beholder. Some people like crispier cookies, some people like softer cookies, some people like the classic chocolate chip. Some people like to add brown butter or tahini to make it a little interesting and exciting. In the same way, the right ending looks really different for different teams and situations, and that's really what we're going to talk about today. Adjourning a two-day retreat is going to look very different than adjourning an hour-long monthly meeting. So the question becomes, how do you pick the right cookie or adjournment for your particular situation? The answer is not just to start throwing flour and chocolate into a bowl and hope that a cookie appears. Just like chocolate chip cookies, there are some general ingredients and measurements that you can use to create a meaningful ending for your team or event. So I'm going to talk through kind of 4 main ingredients that we really discussed and identified as part of adjournment, and talk a little bit about how each of those can be modified. And then, as I mentioned, we'll get into the good part. We'll show you some examples of what this might look like for you and your teams. So the 4 ingredients or elements of adjournment that we're going to talk about are purpose, format, depth, and time. So first up is purpose. So what is your primary goal for closure and reflection? And we include reflection in there specifically for a really important reason. Because we know that reflection is a really important part of learning and just a really important part of the adjournment process more broadly. So we identified some potential goals that you could think about from more of an observing of having people kind of think back and observe what happened over the course of a particular meeting or event. Maybe your goal is learning and you want to start to codify some of that learning through reflection and really get people to start thinking about the ways they're going to apply what they learned or what they kind of experienced throughout the session. Maybe it's about evaluation and thinking about what went well or what didn't go well in a particular meeting or retreat. And then finally, what we often see in particular for kind of longer events is the idea of integrating. So how are we going to take all of the different pieces, all of the different parts, all of the different knowledge and kind of put it together into something that the team or the group can then take forward into their work in the future. The next ingredient is depth. So how much are you asking participants to reveal or share about themselves in in a particular reflection. This can vary a lot from something that's very surface level. I like to use the phrase tweet length. I think maybe Hannah was the one who started that. You know, are you asking people for, excuse me, a simple word, a simple sentence that maybe doesn't get super in depth, but provides just a little window or a little picture into what they experienced or what they thought, all the way through really significant depth, where you're asking people to share personal stories, to talk about how their views or ideas may have changed over the course of the particular retreat, team, or event. Next up is format. So how will you be asking people to reflect or share? This is something that can happen and something that we'll kind of show you some different examples individually. You can ask folks to just kind of take on that reflection internally. It can happen in small groups, or it can be something that happens as a whole team. And then finally, the time piece. How much time do you have to reflect? And a piece of that is really thinking about how much time or material you're reflecting on. So maybe for an hour-long meeting, or maybe for a 30-minute meeting, you only have 90 seconds at the end to say, hey, let's just do a really quick reflection, either talking about, you know, having folks internally kind of process a little bit, or having one or two folks share about what they learned or experienced during the meeting, all the way up through, you know, when you think about having a day-long retreat. 5 minutes is not going to be enough for folks to debrief, reflect, and be able to move forward from that. So really thinking about building in a good chunk of time at the end of your events or meetings to have that specific time and space to reflect on what happened. So we've kind of laid out those principles more broadly. Now we're going to take some opportunities to kind of dig into some examples of how you can kind of mix these different ingredients together. And I'll pass it over to Hannah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop screen sharing because I can just talk about this for a little bit. So we're gonna demo we're gonna demo 3 different adjourning strategies that you might use. And I'm gonna do a very low sharing, very quick, what were some of the other ones? Low depth. And again, this is when you don't need a lot of time to reflect, or you just need to hit a few points of reflection. Maybe you're more checking the box, or you're kind of assessing the room just a little bit to see, okay, what all do we need? And so we're going to use a Jamboard today. Oh, and I'm going to drop the link in chat here really quick. I love Jamboards because they're colorful, they're anonymous. I can preload the background so that I can make them kind of fun and themed if I'd like to. And most people at this stage of the game are pretty used to using virtual whiteboards. So if everybody would migrate to this Jamboard for just a second. I called it a reflection Jamboard. Learning is codified through reflection when we think back on what we've learned. And so I'd like you to think back to August 2021. This is when we started the series, but if you were not with us back in August 2021, that's okay. Just think back to this August. And I'd like you to write on a sticky note one thing you've learned about facilitation since August 2021. If you're not familiar with Jamboards, sticky notes on the left-hand side is a menu, and it's the 4th icon down. It's a square, it's white, and it has 2 lines in it. One's longer, one's shorter. And so if you click on that, and then you can pick your color sticky note and type real briefly, one thing you've learned about facilitation. So again, we're thinking tweet length, we're thinking fast, we're thinking accessible, like really quick, low sharing reflection right now. Okay, we're getting some up here. What about no facilitation's better than bad facilitation? Google Slides are easier to use. Planning is key. Co-creating goals. Keep the audience in mind. Absolutely, yes. Thank you, yes. Facilitation requires significant prep work, yes. I'm trying to establish group connection. They're popping up pretty fast here. I'm going to slow down reading them. Bio breaks. Awesome. So again, at the end of this, now you have a collection of what everybody's thinking. And it also is a little bit of a temperature gauge for you. Like, how did things go? What did people take away? What did they learn? And when it's anonymous, so often people feel like they can write things that they might not if you were to put it in chat or do something like that. Any questions? And otherwise, I'm going to pass to Anne.
All right. I'm just going to give it a second in case anybody does have questions for Hannah. So we're going to do another round of this. And I'm just on the fly changing this prompt because I think it will be better than what we used, than what I had originally planned. So give me 2 seconds to change that. Okay. So my piece of this is we're trying to do something that is slightly deeper and more involved. It might be a way of having a conversation around a longer experience that people have had together. Some of us are involved in facilitation projects that can go for quite a long time with a team or a group. Or there's a time when a lot has happened and there is a reason why you and the leaders you're working with feel we need to spend some more time reflecting on what we've learned in an experience. So one of the things I would say about adjourning is that there may be a sense throughout a facilitation project that there are times that need some sort of wrapping up or closure. So this doesn't necessarily always have to happen only on the end date of a project. There can be times when it's really important through the arc of a project to have a sense of closure. So I'm going to send us in a different space. This is a link to a tool that I adore and use it all the time called Mural. And what I've put together here is just a visual version of one of my favorite facilitation frameworks called 1-2-4-all, Liberating Structures. And often when we do this in physical groups, it's easy to grab people and put them together. You can just talk to the person next to you, grab the 4 chairs closest and create a circle. And that's a little bit harder to do online. So this is a format of how we can have those types of conversations online. I'm going to do a quick look. We've got 26 of us. Perfect. Okay. So if you have joined me in the Jamboard, or people are not here. You're not in Jamboard. Okay, is anybody able to get into the Mural link? So Kristine's got it. So they're there. Okay, great. Oh, that's right. See, I've put this, so this is another feature of Mural. I can put this in anonymous mode and I can't actually see anybody moving around. That's one of the things I really like about Mural because you have that anonymous ability. So what I've put together here is essentially a wheel. We're going to put you into groups and I've put prompts up in the upper left. And the questions here are, what metaphor would you use to describe your facilitation journey over the past several months? I changed this because I know there are some of you who haven't been involved in this particular series, and I wanted to change the question so that it would encompass everybody who's here. And if you haven't been on a facilitation journey in your professional practice, you can use another metaphor for something else that's happening in your professional world, and that'll be totally great. And then there's a second question about how will you use what you've learned during the last several months in your professional world. So the way this is going to work is we're going to divide you up. First, we're going to give you a minute to think on your own about your answer to these questions. This is to give internal processors and introverts like me a time to collect their thoughts without people talking to them. So give you a minute to do that. While you're doing that, we will put you into 13 different breakout groups. And when you're, yep.
Can you
Go
give us
ahead,
the
Hannah.
prompt before you jump off?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Let me type it in real quick. The prompt is, what metaphor would you use to describe your facilitation journey since August? And if facilitation doesn't fit, use your professional journey. And then how will you use what you've learned during that time? That is, it actually is in the mural as well. So you can think about that. And we're going to put you into groups. Don't go putting any stickies on there yet, folks. I see a sticky, I can't see who's doing it. So think about it first, then we're going to put you into pairs. We'll have 13 groups. This is set up that you can have 48 people, so we won't need the whole circle. We'll put you into pairs and you will be in there for 4 minutes. Then what we'll do is we'll combine 2 groups together to make a new group of 4, where you can talk about what you've shared. And then we'll come back together as a whole group, ask you to look at everybody's sticky notes that are there, and we'll have a facilitated conversation a little bit about that and what you're observing. So they don't see the questions. The questions are in the upper left-hand part of the mural. Yes, Amanda.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is a brand new tool and I'm not sure. Oh, so things just appeared. Okay, I was gonna ask you to screen share, but maybe that was the thing, is that you were describing things before we could see them. Okay, thank you.
There we go. Now I can see people moving around, and you're tagged as various types of visiting animals. So it's still pretty anonymous at this point for most people. And the way that this works, I'll just tell you briefly. On the upper left-hand corner, there's a little sticky note icon, and that's what you will use to find sticky notes. Also, when you're in Mural, just double clicking on the surface will bring up a sticky note. So it's a little bit more complicated than Jamboard, but you've got a little bit more flexibility in terms of the size, shape, colors, and format of your sticky notes. So I see people playing and putting sticky notes around. That's great. Yeah, feel free to play in the margins. It's one of the things I actually really like about Mural is that you can just play in the margins and it's totally fine. Okay, so we've got blank stickies. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave it in out. I'm not gonna use the private mode so that everybody can see what's happening. We have 22 people, so I'm going to put us into 11 groups. And if we wind up with a group of 3, don't worry about it. We'll just go in for, we'll have 4 minutes in these little groups of 2. Okay.
Is our room number like our number on the board?
Yes, the room number that you're in corresponds to the board. Okay. They correspond, yeah, they're together. Okay. Looks like we need somebody to join room 10 and somebody else to join room 11. And somebody else.
In either one.
Okay, Alyssa, I'm going to send you to 10.
Okay.
Oh, you're supposed to go to 3.
Oh.
You can go to 3. We'll let you go.
I was the only person in my room.
I'll go with you there.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, I will stay right here.
Okay. Okay, we're in 3.
Ooh, Kristine, I was just going to move you. You're back. Okay. Hi, Susan.
Hi, we came back because it was just the two of us and we wondered whether we were supposed to come back to be reassigned or...
I can send you 2 new groups. Yeah, let's see.
We were having a great conversation. So.
Yeah. We were like, what? I think
see. You were in...
We were in 9.
You were in group, you were in 9. So I will send you to... They're supposed to be with Joel and Kristine. Where did they wind up? Okay, I'm going to send you both to room 11.
Thank you.
If I can find you. So Susan, we'll go to 11. Try to find you where on the list. There you are.
Oh, finally got my video to work.
I see you. There you go.
Great. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you for coming back. Did it go?
Hi,
Sarah.
Hey, how's it going? It didn't put us into a 4-person room.
Where did you have?
We were in 7 and then nothing happened. So we just stayed there and waited.
Well, they're going to come back in about a minute. So sorry about that.
That's okay. So I don't know if you can see the board, but we did, we put our little faces in there. That was one of the instructions. Were we supposed to then just compare with another group, like just compare the metaphors and see themes?
Yeah, the idea was to share. Usually when you do something like this, there's longer than 4 minutes to do something like this. But the idea is that in the pairs, you're sharing a conversation and pulling out themes that you see in common with each other. And then when you get in the larger group, it sort of further deepens and consolidates those pieces. And then when you have everybody come back together, it's another way of, oh, I noticed this, I noticed that. It gives people, when we all come back, you'll kind of have an opportunity to kind of walk around the circle and see what people have.
Nice. I really like this. Did you create this circle and colors?
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Really appreciate a good virtual design.
It's one of the things I like about Mural is it makes it fun, and I don't know, it looks more polished to me in some ways than what, like the spatial aspects of how Mural works makes it a little easier to work work with, and it's more flexible for me than Jamboard.
Yeah, Jamboard doesn't have a lot of capability. The nice thing is just there's a is there like a lower barrier of entry?
Yeah.
I feel like, but this mural that you designed is super like simple, right? Like nothing moves around, you know, like it's just, oh, I like how it's all like in one page. All right, so we'll just wait, I guess, for the rest.
Yep, they're coming right back. I gave them 10 seconds to finish their conversations.
Okay.
There we go.
One thing I do love is when we come back from breakout groups, everybody's camera's still on and we get to see all the smiling faces. I'm guilty of this too, where I leave my camera off too much, but I love when we come back from breakout groups and you see everyone.
Especially when there's not very long between when somebody clicks the button and when you come back. Zap, here you go. I wasn't sure how long we would have. Sometimes there's a minute or 2 minutes, and this one was 10 seconds. So I apologize if we brought you back and you had to abruptly end your conversations with your colleagues. One of the things we were talking about in the sort of interstitial space that some people wound themselves up and they came back to the main room. Normally, when you do this kind of process with this many people, you would be giving people much longer than 4 minutes together. So we've compressed it just to give you a little taste of how it works. But now that we're all back together, I invite you to take a walk around the wheel and visit with the other rooms we're talking about. And since so many of you are professional facilitators and idea integrators, I welcome you putting some common themes or things that you notice in that big center circle, and sharing what you've noticed as well. You can come off mute and let us know what you see. Does anybody want to come off mute and let us hear what you've noticed or seen here?
Yeah, I think I see, and some people have named it explicitly and some it's in the metaphors, but experiential learning. You know, we talked in my group about the idea of learning to cook, and that's not actually my metaphor. Hannah and I came up with it over a whole morning for something we're writing. But then somebody else has the metaphor of learning to improvise music. And that's actually really a very similar metaphor, even though it's completely different contexts. And then somebody else has experiential learning, learning while doing, like just in the words of it. So I see a lot of similarity there, even though we're using different metaphors.
Anybody else have one they want to share?
I really like the theme that I saw across multiple different metaphors of really buckling up for some uncertainty, whether it's like roller coaster or again, the learning while doing, just pushing through the uncertainty, and that's going to be part of the growth pathway.
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I like about this particular tool is that when you've done a process like this, you can actually export your data into a CSV file if you're going to do an analysis of it for later. And so that's kind of a nice way of having the spatial aspect of it, and you can download it and analyze it later. If you've got something that's a very sort of potent piece of learning that people then need to carry forward, or there's additional action steps that need to be taken after this type of exercise. And with the action steps, we are going to hear back from Alyssa.
Sam. All right, so we've got one more example, one more kind of section to talk about. And in particular, as Anne mentioned, kind of what I'm kind of calling adjourning into action, that sometimes we're really thinking about, in addition to that reflection piece, in addition to kind of looking back and thinking about the ways that a particular session or a particular team may have changed you, we're also trying to kind of move that into the future and think about the ways that we're going to use, apply, and kind of move forward. And so in particular, I think that this section is really useful for thinking about the end of retreats, but can also be helpful for kind of general meetings where you're thinking about, okay, we've just had this great meeting, we had this great conversation. How do we make sure that things kind of follow through from there? I do think that there was a recent conversation on the InterReach listserv about choosing between different priorities, and so I think that some of the conversation there kind of bleeds into this conversation as well. So I think the first step of that is being really able to break down your big picture goals into actions and thinking about opportunities for one-time actions, recurring actions, and multi-step projects. And so on the next slide, and I think that this is someone that, again, a tool that someone had mentioned for kind of helping folks select between different ideas. The idea of being able to kind of track different goals or different projects on this matrix of impact and effort. And a lot of people really like to focus on kind of the top part of that, the quick wins and the transformational projects. But I think in general, the ones on the left side, the quick wins and momentum builders, things that are low effort, may or may not be high impact, are really great because those usually translate really easily into an action plan. Like a quick win is usually something like making a website, putting together a steering committee, something that is a task and an action all in itself. And so those are generally really easy to move from your brainstorming board into your action plan. Things that are transformational generally have just a little bit more breaking down in between them. And so again, that's not the piece that I'm going to talk about today, but just kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking about using tools to kind of close out and move from a lot of these big picture brainstorming, exciting times into, okay, well, how are we going to actually make this work? So the next step, the next important piece is really identifying clear ownership and clear deadlines. And one of the tools that I think does a really good job of this that I haven't worked with quite as much is the tool of strategic doing on the next slide. So they lay out kind of this 4-part framework. The first 3, or if you start from kind of that top left corner from that blue, what could we do? What should we do? What will we do? Those are generally the pieces that we think about for kind of the first part of a retreat. How are we making these decisions together? That last piece, the 30-30, can be a helpful way to think about moving into that action piece, because the idea at the end of a strategic doing retreat or meeting is that you set another meeting for about 30 days and you make a plan for who is going to do which thing in the next 30 days and actually like write down what's happening, whose name is by it, and kind of how you'll know it's successful. And so that's kind of an easy framework. Not everyone can use that 30-30 framework in their work or in their meetings, but I think it illustrates really well the idea of having those really clear checkpoints along the way. The final piece, and I'll go back to my baking metaphor because I'm in a food metaphor mood today, baking in accountability and support. And I think that this is what often gets lost. People are really quick to say, okay, this person's going to take care of the website, and this person is going to put together a budget, and this person is going to do XYZ thing. But you really, in addition to that, need some checkpoints along the way. In addition to that, okay, here's our 30-day checkpoint. How are you going to check in with individual people and make sure that they have the support that they need? And then, the other question is, are there things that you need to stop doing or shift resources away from in order to make some of these bigger picture goals happen? And so I think that having really clear conversations and building, again, these are generally really high touch conversations. And so what I see happen a little too often is that people have 8 hours of content for an 8-hour retreat, and they get to the end and they're spending 10 minutes trying to write people's names quickly next to their tasks. And they don't build in the time to have these conversations about what is happening, about who is responsible, about what might need to change to make those things happen, and how the team can continue to support each other. Because, you know, in retreats, you have this opportunity to make this really wonderful, really team-oriented space, hopefully. And what you don't want is to lose that, to say, okay, well, we divvied up, we took our pie and we cut it into 8 slices, and each person has a slice of pie, you know, has their own tasks, and they're going to go and do their own tasks, and they're going to come together. What you really want is integration, to say, okay, God, food metaphors, guys, I'm really sorry. You know, the pieces of pie are not all going to be the same. And so how can we help each other and make sure that each person has the tools, the knowledge, the resources to make their particular task happen, and to be able to come together at the end and have something holistic, not something that's a bunch of different pieces that have been kind of shoved together at the last minute. So I did set up kind of because this group isn't necessarily working on things together, it's a little bit difficult to kind of demo this, because this would generally happen, again, with a team that has really clear shared goals and a shared understanding of what's next and how do we make this happen. I did set up a kind of guided goal setting that is at the more individual level. So if you think about those ingredients, this is an individual level reflection or individual level closure activity. It is going to be, or is designed to be fairly surface level, that you don't necessarily have to share with other people a whole lot about what's going on. A lot of that sharing and reflection is happening internally. Medium time commitment, and the goal really, again, of kind of integration, of taking all of the information, the knowledge, the skills, and kind of putting that to work. With an eye on our time and the fact that it's 10:48, what I think I'm going to do is I'll just kind of run through each of these slides. If you've ever done any type of personal strategic planning type activity before, these questions are probably going to seem fairly familiar, but I would encourage you to take a second and maybe, you know, write these things down, think through these just internally for just a minute, because I think that they still provide some good illustrative value, even if we don't go through a full guided goal setting activity. So the first, of course, would be kind of to start with those actions. So to think about in a time-bound situation, what's one thing that you want to happen in your life this month? And I'll give you about 30 seconds. Again, you can write something down if you want to, maybe just let some ideas pop into your mind about what might be important to you over the next month. Hannah, if you would go to the next slide, please. So the next step would be to think about what actions do you need to take to get you there. And again, it can be helpful sometimes to think about one-time actions. Is there something where you just need to make a quick phone call to make something happen? Are there recurring actions where you need to schedule yourself some writing time or some yoga time each week? Or are there multi-step projects that you need to be able to break down and take piece by piece? Maybe about 30 seconds. Go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, next up is thinking about who you need on your team. So who are the people who can help you? Are there different people who can help you with different pieces? Alternatively, are there people who might be able to stand accidentally or on purpose in your way, who you need to recruit onto your team so that they can help you move forward? And then finally, when will you ask that person to help you? Give you about 30 seconds just to reflect, right, if you feel like it. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. And then finally, the last piece is that little piece of accountability, that little piece of checking in. So if you've been working through this exercise and writing some things down, maybe set a specific date for when you'll come back. Maybe put a calendar appointment so that you have that little bit of extra accountability. 30 seconds. So in addition to thinking about the ways that you can kind of do some general group goal setting, this is a practice that you could incorporate into some of your meetings from kind of a work session standpoint to say, okay, everybody, we're going to go through a quick 10 minutes so that each person individually can take time to think through some of the tasks that they need to get done, and then also have a really clear idea of who they need to ask and get on their team in order to move forward. Because a lot of times that's expected to happen outside of meetings, which is great. It's great to use that time together to collaborate, and sometimes it can be really nice to have that happen and then to have folks share out and build in that accountability. So we are going to go ahead and if there are any final questions, and if I could get Anne to hop on with me so I'm not the only person on camera. Thanks, Anne.
You got it, Alyssa.
I know Hannah has to leave. Do you want to say any final words, Hannah? Okay. Hannah has to hop off. We've got 1 or 2 minutes. I know we kind of packed the session full. We've got 1 or 2 minutes if folks have 1 or 2 quick questions, and then we'll kind of come together as a group one more time. Need everyone too calm with all of that quiet reflection.
It's also a perfectly good way to adjourn.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That was really interesting. And now my kids are going to be in swim lessons finally, because you made me go through that exercise of setting an actual goal with a deadline. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. If you feel like sticking around, we have a dance party button if you need a little pick-me-up before your next meeting.
Kristine, should we stop the recording before the dance party?
I don't think anyone's
Alas, yes. That's probably a good call. All right, recording stopped.